My PPT is visible, Amrit?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Dear students, good evening. Hello, good evening, students.
Good evening, sir.
Oh,
Good
thank you
evening,
for one
sir.
response at least. Okay, fine. And today is a special day. Today is April 23rd. Do you know what is the special today?
World Book Day.
Exactly, World Book and Copyright Day today. Okay, fine. You might have had some celebrations in your institutions, either maybe in the online mode, I hope. So, wishing you a very happy World Book Day. Let me begin the session. And in today's session, I'm going to concentrate on three different topics. 5.6 on internationally recognized standards for information exchange or information interchange between two different libraries or two different communication agencies. 5.9 is about abstracting, and 5.10 is about information retrieval system, its methods, models, all those things. Fine. Okay. So unit 5.6, it talks about standards, what can be employed by the library professionals or information managers whenever they want to interchange or communicate their information with others, or when they want to get others' information and they want to incorporate those information into their bibliographical records. So basically we have three different standards for the purpose. One standard, ISO 2709, is a standard for exchanging information in a very structured logical data set way. And Z39.50 is a standard which helps two computers which are maybe serving in a distributed system in a client server technology to communicate and exchange the data between them. And Z39.71 is a holding statement standard. See, whatever holdings you're having, whatever books, whatever serials, whatever journals you're having, you would like to show the holdings. So I have all these things. So which library is having which volume, which issue is available in a particular library. So those kinds of holding information can be given in Z39.71. So let us see all these three standards in a detailed way in the forthcoming class. So ISO 2709, it is standard from ISO, International Organization for Standardization. And this is a specific format for information exchange. So whenever you want to exchange your data with others, your data in a sense, your bibliographical data, the cataloging data of your bibliographical records. So those details can be exchanged with others. Fine. It was developed by Avram in the late 1960s. And the 1973 first version was published, and the second edition 1981, and the latest edition was published in 2008. And the equivalent of this particular standard, we have ANSI Z39.2 from America. I think even the last class I was telling you that CCF format, it 100% complies with the ISO 2709 standard. So we had seen what are the various components or elements of CCF record. The same thing we are going to see today also. Maybe it will help you for kind of a revision too. So what is the basic structure of a record in ISO 2709 format? First, record label, as you know, it will have 24 characters. Fixed characters, so only one portion of the record which is fixed in fact. And this includes record length. It tells about the base address of various data you have for your record. It is also having some data elements to tell you how many characters are used for indicators, how many characters are used for subfield indicators, identifiers. So all these things are given in first part of the ISO format called record label, which has got 24 characters. Then comes a directory, which works like kind of index to various fields which are made available in a particular record. And it has got 4 parts: field tag 3 characters, length of the field 4 characters, and 5 characters which tell you in which particular place the field starts appearing first, starting position of that particular field, whatever we had said yesterday, continuation. And this is that the list of characters used in the record label, 24 characters. First 5 characters talk about record length, then 6th character talks about record status, 7th one is blank, 8th one talks about bibliographical level of the document you are cataloging. So this is a comprehensive list. Then example of a label. Okay, if you take a record label in ISO, this will be of 24 characters, and it will look something similar to what you see on the screen. The first 5 characters 00101, it talks about total number of characters in the record. That means 101 characters are there. A stands for record status. A means it's a new record. You are preparing a new record. Fine. And this is a blank space. Then comes M. It is a bibliographic level. It says that monograph. That means you are preparing the cataloging entry for a monograph. Fine. Then there is a blank space here. Then comes number 22. It means that after every field, there are 2 characters used to denote indicators and 2 characters to indicate subfields to denote that 22 is there. Then comes 5 characters 00067. It denotes the length of the record. If you take the length of the label and directory, it is what?
Hello, sir.
Yes,
Hello.
please. Yes, please.
So starting slide, I did not see, sir. I came after 5 minutes.
Oh, don't worry. Maybe once the presentation, so I'll start once again. I'll tell you absolutely no problem. Okay. We are just discussing about. See, I'll just go back few slides. This is the first slide we have. What is this? All these things and all. We started with ISO 2709. I told you what is that. Then the basic background of ISO. Then the structure of ISO, record label, directory. What are the various fields found in the record label? I'm just explaining how a record label will look like in ISO. Is it okay?
Okay, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Then there's a blank. Then comes 452. It indicates first, second, and third and fourth elements of each entry in the directory. You know very well, directory has got 4 fields. First field will always be a tag. Okay, that has got 3 fields. So that is not indicated by default. The second item will have 3 characters, then 4 characters, then 5 characters, then last 2 characters. These 2 characters denote, as you saw yesterday, 1 character for segment identifier and another character is for occurrence identifier. I think it's clear. Fine. Then comes directory. In ISO, there is a directory that has got 12 characters plus 1 character plus 1 character, whatever I showed you now. So 3 characters denote the tag, 4 characters denote what is the length of that particular data field, and remaining 5 characters tell you at what particular position a field begins appear. Fine. And this is an example of directory. You can see here 001. It stands for tag, 3 character positions. Then comes length of the field has got 4 positions, 0007. That means the tag 001 will have 7 characters. Fine. And what is starting position? 00000. That means the first tag 001, which has got 7 characters, will start at 0. 0 is the first position of any directory. Okay, this is a directory structure. Fine. So after record label and directory, we have 2 more fields in ISO. One is data field called variable field, where you have 2 characters called indicators. Then comes subfield identifiers. I think I showed yesterday, $A, $B, $C, they're all delimiters. So 2 characters. Then relevant subfield, whether it is if it is a title proper, parallel title, equivalent title, something like that. If you take author's entry element, secondary element, date of birth, like that, many subfields will be there for every field. At the end of field, there will be a field separator. It is only 1 character. Fine. So these are the 4 different parts of an ISO 2709 format. It is just a recapitulation of what we had seen yesterday while discussing about CCF. Fine. Good. And in ISO, we have got 3 different kinds of fields. Okay. The tag 001 is known as record identifier because this particular tag is used only to identify a particular record, and this particular identifier is assigned by the organization which creates this particular record. Okay, that is record identifier field 001. Then comes reserved fields 002 to 009 are reserved fields. That means whenever computer is going to process your record, these fields will provide all the necessary details for processing the data. So they are reserved fields. They don't contain any kind of cataloging data. Fine. Then comes bibliography fields 0102 999. They are bibliographic fields where you give all information about title, segment of responsibility, edition area, material specific details, production distribution, public distribution, notes area, series area, tracing section, terms of availability. So all those things are available in 0102 999. And optionally, you have indicators and you have identifiers. I think we had seen enough of indicators and identifiers in the previous session. Good. Okay, this is a very important concept called yes, please. Anything you want to ask? Okay, fine. There is something called a copy cataloging. For example, you are in a library. You are using a particular library automation software. When you are cataloging the items, there is something called copy cataloging. For example, you have a book in your hand. You would like to catalog this particular book. What you can do is that already some people might have prepared cataloging record for the book what you have in your hand. Okay, so you need not prepare cataloging according to mark and all. What you can do is that you can go and search for this particular record in databases which allow copy cataloging. Maybe something like WorldCat or Library of Congress. Just go. You can find out the same record what you are cataloging here. So what you can do is that after adding the class number, book number, accession number, and local notes, you can download the entire data about that particular book in ISO 2709 format. Okay. Once downloaded, you say okay, and you need not enter all other particulars like title, edition, these things and all. All those things will be automatically incorporated into your library automation software. So that is the beauty of this ISO 2709 format, which is very, very helpful for copy cataloging. Fine. Okay, that's a good thing. Okay, let us move on to the second concept called Z39.50. So it is a protocol which is meant for two computers to talk to each other when both the computers are involved in the process of information exchange. One computer is asking for the information, the other computer is providing the information. The computer which is asking for the information is known as client. The computer which is giving the information is called a server. So in a client server application mode, when you are transacting over TCP IP computer network. So you might have heard about this particular standard, transmission control protocol, internet protocol. So if you are working on this particular climate, in fact, in the world, almost entire network is based on TCP IP protocol. So there, if you're having two computers, one is server, one is a client, whenever you want to exchange and one computer wants to retrieve some record from other computer, this particular standard is going to act as a basic formalities which will facilitate this retrieval process. Fine. In fact, this Z39.50 will act as a backdoor. See, for example, you want to download some records from X library which is located in America. You approach them. If that particular library is permitting you that Z39.50 access to their catalog, it's very simple. You can download the entire data very easily. Fine. Good. Okay. See, what does this Z39.50 do? Please understand, this particular protocol feels that in any information retrieval process, only two stages are there. Only two stages. One is selection of information and the other is retrieval of that information. And this particular protocol will provide you all the necessary steps and services to enable to carry out both these activities. Okay. So for example, you are having computer, you are having Windows operating system. I am having a computer, I am having Linux operating system. You are using Google as a search engine. I am using Opera search engine. So when we are using many different kind of operating systems, many different kind of search engines, many different kind of database, absolutely no problem. This particular software will help you to interoperate and help you to retrieve the data from other computers. Okay, fine. How this happens? I told you two computers are there. One computer, it starts asking for some details by sending some messages. In Z39.50, we don't say that they are clients and servers. They are using a separate technology, terminology called origin and target. Clients are called origin and the servers are called targets. This particular software acts as a mediator between this client server or origin and target, and it helps the client machine to translate the query and pass it to server, and it helps the server to execute the request and give the reply in terms of information or journals and databases. Okay, that is the main job of Z39.50. It works like a kind of a bridge between the origin and the target, that is client and server. Fine, good. Basically, this particular protocol is having 11 basic structural blocks or facilities. There are 11 facilities. Each facility will have either one service or two services or three services. Okay, fine. So these 11 facilities are initialization, you can see in the screen, search, retrieval, result set delete, browse, sort. These are the 11 services which are available in this particular protocol. Fine. And see, whenever a server wants to talk to client, the server will make use of any one of these 11 facilities depending on its requirement. In the same way, whenever a client wants to ask something from the server, the client will make use of any one of these 11 services to fulfill its requirements. Fine. And please understand, these are the basic three services. What are they? One is initialization, search, present. So these are the basic services which will be available in almost all kinds of Z39.50 applications. Fine, good. What are these? Let us see. As I told you, there is a client, there is server. What is this particular service called? Init. It's known as init. Init is an initialization. That means the origin, the client is asking for some information from the server after validating itself, maybe by giving some password or maybe by agreeing to the terms and conditions of the server. We enter into the server by giving some query. That is known as initialization. Then comes search. It is a major work. Whenever a client wants to conduct a search, it has to make use of the service called search. Okay, here the client will be able to submit all its service requirements to the target. The query may be either simple one or maybe is as complex as Boolean operators. You can make use of and, or, not, less than, more than, complex. All these kinds of search strategies can be adopted by you. Fine. Then third one is present. That means present is a service, is a package which is used by the client to ask the server to give the records to present the results in a particular state. So you can say, I want only those records which were published after 2010. I want only those records which are published from India. Or I want only those records which are available in UK format, US mark format. So that kind of presentation limitations you can fix using this particular service called present. Okay, these are the three basic services out of 11 services which are available in Z39.50. Good. What about the later versions of Z39.50? You can see here version 2 was published in 1992, and what they did in second version was that they increased the capability of Z39.50 in terms of complex search queries. That means after the introduction of version 2, we are able to conduct much more complex queries in Z39.50. Okay. But what was the drawback with the Z39.50 version 2 was that, see, if you are using Z39.50 first version or second version, only bibliographical records can be searched. Okay, non-bibliographical records, maybe the cataloging data for non-book materials or electronic materials, those kinds of non-bibliographical materials, so may not be searched in Z39.50 version 1 and 2. Fine. And version 3 was published in 1995, and they have got lot of advanced features that will help you to search both for bibliographic and non-bibliographic searching. Okay, that is the plus point of version 3. Good, I think it's clear. So Z39.50 is standard that helps two computers to talk to each other, to communicate each other, to carry out 11 different services so that the client is able to retrieve required data and records from the server machine. That is a substance of this Z39.50 standard. Fine, good. Let me move on to Z39.71. This is the third standard and the last standard we are discussing today. See, for example, in your library, you are subscribing to 30, 40, 50 journals. And these journals may be available since many years. See, a journal you might have subscribed only last year. So only very few copies will be available, either online or offline. But there may be some journals, maybe for the last 20 years, last 15 years, you have been subscribing, you have been getting those copies, and every year you bind them as a maybe one volume consisting of 10 issues, 12 issues, you bind them together, keep it as a bound volume in your library. So whenever you are having these kinds of series data, whenever you want to give particulars about your holdings, what volumes, what issues, what parts I have in my library. Sometimes if you take a university library, there will be a central library and there will be a department library in each and every department. Sometimes what happens is that the same book may be available both in the central library and in the department library. So you need to prepare a kind of a standard for displaying these holdings. What book is available where? Fine. So that is the reason why we have a standard called Z39.71 standard. This standard has got two items. One is data areas and second is called principles. See, you know very well, if you prepare cataloging in AACR based on ISBD, you'll have 8 different areas. Okay, the same way, Z39.71 has prescribed 6 different data areas. They are called as data areas, and the various subfields, whatever you have inside each and every area is called data element. So there are data areas and there are data elements. But this particular standard does not tell us what is the order in which we have to arrange the areas. Okay, they are not talking about the order. In AACR, there's an order. First, this is the first area. This is second area. And this is the punctuation you should follow to differentiate one area to another area, one field to another area. It's very, very clear. But in Z39.71, they are not very particular with the punctuation marks you have to use to differentiate one area and another area. But in fact, they have given punctuation marks to differentiate between elements. Okay, fine. So what are these 6 areas? Let us see these 6 areas. First area is item identification area, where you are writing the identifier. For example, there is a book in the library. It has got 10 volumes. You are preparing a holding record for that particular 10 volume work. So what may be the identifier? Maybe the ISBN number. If it's a journal, ISSN number, or maybe OCLC record number. So these numbers are used to denote the bibliographical record, a book or a journal or a video cassette or a bound volume or encyclopedia, for which you are going to prepare the holding record. Fine. So this is a connection. See, in a library automation system, what happens? We are having the accession number as a unique item. We are having a student's registration number as a unique item. That will match. The same way, what is the relation between the book and the holding record? What you are going to prepare for that book? It is the identifier. What is identifier? It can be ISBN number, or ISSN number, or any such unique number can be used. Fine. See, please understand. See, previously we discussed about bibliographical format and structure, where we studied how to prepare, how to enter, how to write the information about the book. Title, author, edition, publisher, distributor, ISBN number, all those things. But in this standard, we are studying how you can create a holding record for a particular journal, for a particular multi-volumed book. Okay, you are preparing a holding record which is different from the bibliographical record. Fine, good. And second is location data. In the second area, it has got 4 elements. One is name of the institution. Who is having this particular book? See, if we take Colonial Classification 7th edition, who has this book first? And sub-location. Sometimes in Cochin University, Department of Mechanics or Department of Electronics may be having this particular book. That is sub-location. Okay. And we can have code like this. DLC means Library of Congress. DLC Law Library means this is a law library situated inside Library of Congress. So you can mention the library where this particular book is available. If this is available in a particular branch, you can mention that this particular book is available in this particular branch of this particular main library. You can have a branch. Then you can have a copy number. So copy number can be either this kind of copy identifier exclusively created by the library, or it can be a barcode number, can be used copy number. Then comes call number, maybe using DDC or LZ, you have a classification number. So these 4 items will be available in location data area. Fine. Third area is data of report area. You're going to write on which date this particular holding record was created or it was updated. What is the format? YYYYMMDD. This is a format. Good. Okay. So what is the fourth area? General holdings area. In this area, you are going to talk whether this is a book or not, whether it is a DVD. You are going to have 5 different elements. What are they? You see here. You are going to say whether this is a basic bibliographical unit or secondary bibliographic unit. So what is the meaning of that? See, if you purchase a book, sometimes you get a CD as an accompanying material. If you are purchasing a geographic book, sometimes you get atlas or map as a free book. If you are getting a textbook, the question answer book will be available as a supplement. So those supplement books are called as secondary bibliographical unit. Fine. And secondly, you are going to say the book for which you are going to create a holding record, whether that is a hardback, a paperback, or an ebook, or whatever it may be. What is the physical form of the book you are describing? Then completeness. It tells you if you are preparing a holding record for a journal, for a serial, tells you what is the completeness of your collection. You can say, so I have got 40% of the total serials. I have got 50% of total journals published. So what is the percentage of collection you have in your library? There are codes to designate all these percentages. Fine. Then you can say, if you ordered for a particular item, or no, we have been getting this item for the last 10 years. Or you can say, no, till last year we purchased. So these kinds of acquisition status can be revealed. And finally, you can say, what is the retention policy of your organization? You can say that, see, I'll be having all these journal volumes till the end, till the library life. Or you can say that, no, after every year, we will scan all the journals and we convert into soft copy, and then we can throw off all these old journals. So what is your retention policy? So all these 5 different elements are given in general holdings area. Good. Then comes 5th area, extent of holdings area. In this area, again, you have got 5 data elements. You are going to talk about name of the unit, whether it is a volume, it's a number, it's a serial, it is a reel. So what is the unit you are using to measure the continuity of a particular resource? Extent of unit. That means you can say that V stands for name of the unit, volume 1 to 19. I am having all the 19 volumes in my library. Fine. Then comes enumeration and chronology. What is enumeration? The actual number. You say volume 1, no? Volume 1 to 19. This is called as enumeration. V is the name of the unit. 1 to 19 is the extent of the unit. Both these two things taken together is called as enumeration. Then comes chronology, where you talk about the year. So you are having volume 1 to 5, which was published from 1901 to 1905. It's a chronology. Then comes specific extra note. You can say whether the particular element is a bound one or it's not a bound one. Fine, good. The last area is holdings note area. It is a free text area. You can just go and type. You need not follow any rules and regulations. Whatever you feel, you can type. Just like notes area, what you see in AACR. Here, what kind of information can be given here? You can say that a particular resource is water damaged. We are not circulating a particular material. Volume 16 is not available. It is missing in the library. It is not available. And you can say that we don't have slides from 7 to 9. You can say that no, this particular very important film is transferred to safety room. It's not available in the main library. You can say. You can say that the video what is it's a master one. It is a master copy you're having. You can say that one particular volume is not published. So all these kinds of notes can be given in last area called holdings note area. So Z39.7 known has got 6 areas. Each and every area is called data area. Under the data area, we have got a lot of data elements. Okay, and how to write data elements, how to write 2 or 3 different elements together. They have given the punctuations mark on what is the order in which these elements are to be written in each and every data area. Fine, good. And second thing, as I told you, Z39.71 has got 2 things. One is 6 areas and other is 9 principles. Please make a note of the number. Z39.71 has got 9 principles. Only based on these 9 principles, the entire protocol revolves around. What are they? Levels of specificity. See, in ASA, they got 3 levels. First level description, second level description, third level description. Okay. In the first level, they got minimum. In the second level, normal, medium. And third level, detailed description. The same way, Z39.7 also, what amount of holding data you have to display in the record. Either you want to have a minimum or very high. So there are 4 levels. Level 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 levels are there. Good. Second one, identification of data elements. As I told you, data elements are identified by punctuation marks. Okay. And punctuation marks are given elaborately for 2 areas called general holdings area and extent of holdings area, but they are not consistent. Okay. And third one is optional data area or element. See, either data area or data elements, they can be either mandatory or they are not used or they are optional. It depends on the level. For example, if you take a first level, some data area is mandatory, some may not be mandatory. If you take second level of specificity, some data elements are optional, some data elements are not at all used, some data elements are mandatory. So depending on the data area, the data elements may be either mandatory or they are not used in that particular level, or they are optional in that particular level. So depending on whether you are using level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, the elements may be either mandatory or optional. So it all depends on your library to decide whether you are going to choose level 1 of display, level 2, level 3, level 4. Okay. Then comes pieces held. So if you are following level 1 to 3, you will mention only how many journal volumes are available in my library. You are not going to tell what issues are not available in your library. Okay, fine. Then comes number of locations and copies. See, for example, sometimes same book may be available in the central library and the branch libraries, maybe in Trivandrum district library and all the Panchayat libraries. When same copy is available in multi locations, either you can prepare a composite record to tell that this particular book is available in library 1, library 2, library 3, or you can prepare a separate holding record for each and every unit. See, central library 1 record, holding record, for a branch library 1 hold record. That also you can prepare, absolutely no problem. Then comes form. The holdings you can have either in the itemized way or the compressed way. That means for each and every individual item, you can prepare a holding record, or even for a multi-volume compressed way also you can prepare the holding record. Fine. What are the cataloging system? They say that the holding standard is independent. There is no relation between this cataloging style and the holding standard. And if at all any conflict arises between cataloging standard and Z39, as far as holding standard is concerned, you have to follow only Z39.71, not ACR2. Fine. Then what about the relationship of holding statement to bibliography unit? Please understand. See, we are creating a link between original bibliographical record, what you created using maybe ACR2 or CCC or RDA, that is a bibliography record. Now we are creating a holding record. You are creating a link between these 2 items. That means one holding record will point to a particular bibliographical unit. Fine. Then what about the formats? For example, your library is having a particular journal. The same journal, same volume, same issues available both in electronic form and in the hard copy form. What to do? So as a librarian, you can decide whether you want to have 2 different holding record or only one composite record, that you can decide. So these are the 9 principles of Z39.71. Good. So there ends 5.6. Let me go to 5.9, abstracting. Fine. So abstracting is very simple, you know very well. See, abstracts are very, very important in the part of any research work, because abstracts always the preferred standalone tools used by most of us. So before we decide whether to read a particular article or not, we read the abstract, we decide whether to read the entire article or not. Many a time, in the case of review process, editorial reviews, the journal people will send only the abstract. So what is the abstract? It is a concise and accurate representation of the contents of a document. The document can be a journal, it can be a book chapter, a thesis, a research report, anything can be abstracted. So the abstract should be very, very short in clear sentences, and it should exactly reply and it should exactly convey what is available in a particular document, not exaggerating, not telling less. Exactly what is available in the original record should be given in the abstract. Good. What are types of abstracts? So title abstract, where title is slightly expanded, nothing more. See, this is a title, bibliography on medicinal plants and related subjects. So what is the abstract? It's very simple, bibliography on medicinal plants and related subject. So title is little bit elaborate, that's all. That is known as title or abstract. So this abstract is used when the title is very, very transparent. We will be able to understand what is inside the particular document based on the title. Good. And secondly, annotation. Annotation means you take the title and you amplify the title. You add some more information, you make it an annotation. See, this is an example. Creating APA-style annotated bibliographies. This is the name of the work. What is the abstract? This is annotation. Excellent resource for creating annotated bibliographies. Only 2 lines. We are just expanding the title. Then comes indicative or descriptive abstract. So this is a kind of abstract which is short in nature. They are longer than annotation, but comparatively they are short in nature. They describe only the broad concepts. They are using only general terms. They talk about what is done, what is discussed, what is analyzed, what is compared in a particular document. And mostly they are presented in a single paragraph, and they are most useful whenever you want to prepare abstract for state-of-the-art reports, literary criticism, or descriptive works. So an example for descriptive abstract: background, purpose, focus. That's it. Then comes informative or comprehensive abstract. You can say that this abstract acts like kind of a substitute for the original document. So you need not read the original document. You just read this informative abstract. You will get exact thing about the record, whether the purpose, the data, methodologies followed, what is the formula used, what is the findings, what is the conclusions, what is the recommendations. So it can act as a substitute for the original document. You see, it is bigger than indicative abstract, and this kind of abstracts are used for whenever you want to report an experimental work, or you want to give a report on any specific research reports. You can make use of informative abstracts. This is an example. You talk about the background, you say what is the purpose, you say what are the methods you employed, you talk about the results, you give a conclusion. It's a very detailed informative abstract. Then comes structured abstract. See, the same informative abstract, if it is presented under various headings, instead of presenting the abstract in a single paragraph, you are going to present the abstract in 5 or 6 headings. Something like you write objectives, methodology, findings, conclusion. So you are giving in headings. That is known as structured abstract. Good. Then comes slanted abstract, an abstract which is written towards a particular group of people. Yeah, abstract which is written from a particular point of view for a particular cause. That is known as slanted abstract. Good. Author abstract, an abstract written by the author is called author abstract. Subject specialist prepared abstract. Many companies, what they do is the publishers, once the article is ready, they will give to special experts, abstractors, they will prepare the abstracts. Good. So these are the various types of abstracts. Then what about the guidelines? What should be an abstract? What should not be an abstract? We say ABC of good abstract. A stands for accuracy. It should be accurate. It should be brief, and it should be very clear. A, B, C. Okay. Then whenever you're preparing abstract, is that you are using correct sentences without any grammatical mistake. You are using short and clear sentences. Don't use very long and intricative sentences. You see that the abstract is very easy to understand. So people can read this, they can understand. It's not ambiguous. It is not confusing. And you decide what is the terminology you have to use, depending on your target audience. If your target audience is school children, you have to write accordingly. And don't write your own interpretation unless it is a critical abstract. Don't include your own interpretations. And the abstract should be able to stand alone. So many a time we don't read article, we read only abstract. It should have the capacity to stand alone. Fine. Now, what is the process? You have to read the article, understand the background, its introduction, its main points, make a note of those points, prepare a rough abstract, then But thing is, don't lift the sentences directly from original article. Okay, you keep on restructuring it. Once you prepare an abstract, read the full article and read the abstract and see whether your abstract is able to represent the contents of the original article. Fine, good. Then what are things you're not supposed to do? Please don't write in your abstract, this paper discusses, this report discusses. Don't do that. Don't include references. And never end the sentences like so-and-so is described, so-and-so is reported, so-and-so is analyzed. So don't use all these kinds of sentences. Don't repeat the title. And don't just give the titles or topics, whatever is given in the article. You are supposed to give information, not the topics. And don't give any mathematical equations unless otherwise it's required. And never refer to something which is not in the content of the document. Okay, don't go beyond the scope of the document. And try not to use trade names, acronyms, abbreviations, symbols in your abstract. So these are the do's and don'ts with regard to the preparation of abstracts. Fine. The last point is information retrieval system. Good. And so what is an information retrieval system? You know, library is the best example of information retrieval system. A system where we acquire, we analyze, we process and store different sources of information so that whenever a particular user comes to a library, we get the query from him, we find out the records, whatever documents match his query, whatever documents match his information need, we are providing. That is what information retrieval system is all about. The term was coined by Calvin Muse, and long back we had both kind of systems. Either the IRS will retrieve the bibliographical record, or it will, nowadays even it is able to retrieve the original record. And we had text retrieval, only text will be retrieved. Now you got multimedia retrieval, audio retrieval system, video retrieval system, or a multimedia retrieval system. All these kinds of IRS are available. What are the major functions? Only two are there: organization of the information, retrieval of the information. These two are the major information task of any IRS. Fine. What are the components? You take any IRS, a typical library or a science research organization or a database provider. You take any kind of information retrieval system. They have these three components. One is user subsystem. You can see in the screen. User is coming to the information retrieval system, maybe a library database. He's having some information need. He needs some information. And this information need, he translates into a question. Okay, he wants to ask a question. This question is converted into a query based on the query language, whatever you have in your search engine. Fine. This is a user system. Then we have document subsystem, where if you take a library, we purchase various documents, we prepare catalogs, indexing, all those things, and we have a cataloging record, web, opaque. Now two things are there. One is user system, another is document system. Then searching a retrieval subsystem. These two are matched. Which one? The query of the user and the database what we have, they are matched, and we are retrieving the relevant documents we give to user. Fine, good. What are the components? User is there. He's having the information need, and his information need he's converting into a query. He's approaching the database. The database is searching the index, gets the data, give the results. This is a whole component system of an IRS. Good. See, what are the features of an IRS? So you have to understand whether it is your library or any IRS, it should have the following features. That means it should provide prompt dissemination of information. Prompt in time, it has to provide information. You should provide all the options for filtering the information. So I don't need this, I want only this, and that kind of filtering should be possible. Then it should provide right information at the right time. And you should be able to switch over the information from one record to another record. And you should be able to receive information in an economical way, not spending so much of time, so much of energy. You should be able to receive the information. You should be able to browse the collection. You should be able to get latest information. You should be able to access other information through this from your own information system. And your IRS should be providing you enough personalized help for conducting enough queries. Fine. So these are features of information retrieval system. What are the models? Many models are there. Based on input output, we have data retrieval model where data is retrieved. Information retrieval model, information is retrieved. Knowledge retrieval model where knowledge is retrieved. Okay, three different models. But of late, based on the influence or concurrence of many subjects in the library science, we started getting lot of information retrieval models. Something like Boolean retrieval model, fuzzy logic, set theory, vector space, linguistic, all those many models are there. Okay. So in fact, the first few, Boolean, fuzzy, set, vector space, probabilistic model, these models are called classical models. They are classical models. When you come to the bottommost portion, linguistic model, mathematical model, psychological model, they are all called neoclassical or non-classical models. Fine. So I'm not going to discuss about each and every model, but I would like to say something about two models which are frequently asked in the examinations. One is vector space model. It is a model where, as a librarian, you are using vector space model. You are creating vectors for the documents what you have in your library, and you are creating vectors for the queries given by the user. Okay, in mathematical terms, you are creating vectors to represent documents and the queries, where in a multi-dimensional space. What is a multi-dimensional space? See, you are having a lot of documents. You are creating indexing terms, subject headings for all the documents. So all these subject headings come together as different dimensions of this multi-dimensional space. Here what we do, whenever user comes to library, gives a query, we are taking the query, we are taking all the important keywords from that query is converted into a vector based on term frequencies. The same way, we take our library collection, we take all the keywords, we are trying to find out the matching relevant records, and we are matching. See, document vector and query vector, wherever they are similar, it means that this particular document is going to satisfy the information needs of the users. Fine. That is this all a small introduction about this vector space model. Then comes very famous probability model. Okay, here they say that whenever a user comes to library, ask for the information, you are using the probability model. That means you are going to find out, you are going to rank the documents based on to what extent a particular document is probable enough to be relevant to the query. You are finding out the efficiency, probability of the document having the ability to be relevant. You find out the relevance, you rank the documents, then the documents which are highly ranked will be given to users. So these are two different models. Fine. Then last component is evaluation. Once you have an IRS which is being used by you, you have to evaluate its performance. How to evaluate how good is my information retrieval system? Find how, based on effectiveness, in the sense to what extent your IRS is able to provide you relevant information, to what extent it is not providing you not relevant information. That is effectiveness. What is efficiency? How economical, how efficient your IRS is in terms of money, in terms of time, in terms of energy. Fine. Lancaster has given 5 different criteria for evaluating an IRS. Coverage of system, ability of the system to retrieve wanted items. Okay, if they are relevant item, to what extent your IRS is capable of retrieving only relevant items, and to what extent your IRS is able to avoid retrieval of unwanted items. Okay, one is positive, another is negative side. Response time. What is response time? You go to library, ask for the information, you get some time, you need some time to get your material. So that time is known as gap, is known as response time. Amount of effort required by the user. What is the time and energy and efforts to be initiated by the user to get the document? Good. Okay. Then Vickery, he says 6 criteria: coverage, recall, response time, precision, usability, and presentation. So you know all these things. Then Cleverton, he says again 6 criteria: recall, precision, time lag, effort, form presentation. Even form presentation is important. See, I want the document to be reported as HTML format or PDF format or visual format, something like that. Then coverage of the collection. To what extent this particular collection is having enough resources for my satisfying my information need. Cleverton, I think you know his name. Cleverton, who was very famous for his Cranfield information retrieval research experiments. Recall and precision, you know very well. For example, 100 relevant documents are available in library. Your IRS is able to retrieve 75 of them. That means that the recall ratio is 75%. Good. Okay. For example, your IRS has retrieved 150 items for a query. Total retrieved items are 150. Out of 150, 75 are relevant, 75 are not relevant. So your precision is 50%. Fine. Good. Noise ratio, it tells you that number of non-relevant documents out of the total documents retrieved. So out of the total documents retrieved by you, how many documents are not relevant? That is noise ratio. So noise ratio should be lesser in terms of your information retrieval. Then comes fallout ratio, tells you how many non-relevant documents out of total documents available in the library. That is known as fallout ratio. Then comes novelty ratio. That means you go to library, ask for the information, you get 100 documents. But out of 100 documents, how many documents are new to you? How many documents you are seeing for the first time? How many documents are having latest information? For example, out of 100 retrieved documents, 15 are new documents. So novelty ratio is 15%. The last one is indexing exhaustivity. To what extent your indexing is very deep, very detailed, very comprehensive. So depending on the indexing exhaustivity, your recall and precision ratio will be better. Then as I told you, response time. Good. So these are the things I would like to show you today. So 3 different things we discussed so far. One is about information exchange formats, ISO 2709, Z39.50, Z39.71. Then we discuss about abstracts, the types and guidelines. Then we discuss about information retrieval system. Fine. Okay. So the next 40 minutes, we'll have some question answer discussion. Before I move on to question and discussion, if you want to ask any question on the topics we have seen in the last 45 minutes, you are most welcome. Anything you want to get clarification or you want to add some points, you are most welcome.
So first 5 minutes slides want to show.
First 5 minutes. Okay. I think you were there when I was showing this slide. What is ISO? I think you don't have any problem with this slide.
No, sir, I started from Z3 to Z that I started from that.
No problem. ISO is not a big issue. Whatever we had discussed yesterday about the CCF, common unique format, because CCF follows 2709. So whatever the record structure we studied yesterday for CCF, same thing we discussed today also. Just for the purpose of recapitulation or revision, I given a kind of explanation on the structure of ISO. Something like record label, how many characters will be there, what is the directory, how a directory will look like. Okay, example of a label I was explaining. I told you about directory. I was explaining how a directory will look like, and data field, kinds of fields in ISO, and copy cataloging. This is what we discussed in the first 5 minutes. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, anything else you want to ask or clarify? Please ask.
Sir, can you reduce speed? It is very difficult to.
Okay. Sure. Because only limited time is there, no, I should complete the portion and then I should discuss questions also. Maybe, sure, I will reduce the speed. Absolutely, no problem. You can tell me the area where you are not able to grasp me so that I can repeat it, no problem.
Sir, yesterday I am leave. I can't attend the class, so
Okay.
it is very gap.
Okay. But yesterday's class is different from today's class, yeah. Yesterday we had different concepts. Today we are having different concepts. Both are not. It's not necessary that you should attend yesterday's class to understand today's class. No, not exactly. No need. Anything else so that we can go to the question answers?
Sir,
Yes, please.
sir, in data field structure, how many characters are in subfield?
And actually, subfield code is there, subfield identifier is there, one delimiter plus one character. So delimiter usually will be a dollar symbol, and it will be followed by either numbers or lowercase alphabets, $A, $B, $C. This is the subfield identifiers. Followed by subfield identifier, you have the actual data. Okay, for example, $A, you will write something like 24 centimeter. $B, you will write something like 47, something like that. $C, you will write something like +1 DVD. So that varies from data to data. But every subfield identifier will have 2 characters. One delimiter followed by either one numerical number or one lowercase English alphabet. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, any other question? Please go ahead. I'm happy to get some questions. Shall we proceed to the questions?
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me start with the patterns. So as I did yesterday, today also what I did was I just went through all the question papers, original UGC question papers from 2015 to 2020, and I got some questions from whatever topic we discussed today. Let me show you those questions first. Okay, who prepared guide for the preparation and the publication of abstracts? UNESCO. Okay, please make a note of this. Okay, then precision is the fraction of documents retrieved that are relevant to the user's information need. It's true, because precision talks about out of the retrieved documents, how many are relevant to you. That is what precision is all about. So first statement is true. In practical situations, recall and precision are always inversely related. That is true. So when recall is more, it means you're getting more documents, then precision will be normally less. When you're getting more exactly precise materials, your recall will be less. So always there is an inverse relationship between precision and recall. Good. Then if you want to increase the recall, what are you supposed to do? You have to broaden your research. So if you are broadening your research, something you are using or operator. Okay, Ramasamy or Kandasamy. So both the articles with Ramasamy or with the Kandasamy or both Ramasamy and Kandasamy will retrieve, you'll get more information. You get more information, recall will be higher. Okay, good. So this you remember, they have mentioned ISO standards, 4 different standards. ISO 999, it's about organization of indexes. ISO 214, it's about industrial product representation. ISO 2788, it's about Thesari, how to prepare thesaurus. ISO 596, it's about how to determine the subject for a document and how to select index term for a particular document. So the 4 ISO standards, they have asked you to arrange them according to the year of their formation. Okay, this is 74, 76, 85 and 96. Please remember these standards. Then January 2007, they're asking out of these 4, what are all the protocol standards? Please understand, Z39.50 we discussed, that is for information exchange between 2 computers. Z39.71, that is for holdings display standard, that is another protocol. This Z39.83, this is a standard for circulation interchange. So you are having a library automation system. I am having a library automation system. I want to borrow some item from you. I want to lend some item to you. So this borrowing and lending can be done between systems, between libraries based on this particular protocol. And this one, Z39.05, it's not a protocol. Okay, so these A, B, D, 3 are the protocols. Okay. ISO 26324, this is a standard for DOI. You know this, digital object identifiers. You know this, okay? So this is a persistent identifier. You are going to give a permanent address to a particular document, a particular resource. So DOI is meant for providing a permanent address to a resource. Okay, how to do that? How to prepare DOI? ISO 26324 tells you. Good. Okay. ISO 2108, this is a standard meant for designing, structuring and giving international standard book number. This is a standard on ISBN number. Please make a note of all these ISO standards. Okay. Okay, let us skip this. Yes. July 2018, they asked the question, what is the name of the committee responsible for Indian standards related to libraries? So you can see here, many standards are there. Out of this, Z39 is the protocol, is something different. And this Bureau of Indian Standard, LIB, this is not a standard. TC46 is standard. It is a standard from NISO. Okay. So they have prepared this technical committee standard. Okay. But in India, we have MSD5. Okay. That is a standard for libraries of India. Actually, who has this means? You might have heard about BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards. They are having 14 divisional councils to prepare standards on various items. Out of 14 division councils, there is one council called Management and System Division Council. They are having many committees. One committee is Documentation and Information Sectional Committee, committee number 5. That is why this MSD5 is there. This committee is responsible for preparing standards related to libraries, documentation, information centers. Okay, so MSD5 is the answer. Which are the following is not a classical model of information retrieval? As I told you, Boolean model, probabilistic model, vector model, all these three are classical models. Cluster model is a new classical model. You might have heard about cluster, you know, in static clustering. That means all the related entities will be brought together as a cluster. Okay, clustering technique. Good. Then what are the features of classical IR model? See, in the classical IR model, whatever documents you have, you are preparing index terms for each and every document. So this is a basic principle of any classical IR model. And there is an assumption that terms are mutually independent. So the terms, index terms, what you are creating for each and every record, they are not dependent on each other. They are exclusively different from it. They are independent key terms. So these two are the features. These two features are not applicable to classical IR model. All terms are equally useful. Index terms cannot be weighted because in classical model, we are weighting the terms. Either in the vector space model or probabilistic model, we are giving weightage to terms based on their occurrences. So these two are not correct. A and D are correct. Then, what are the features of vector space model information retrieval system? See, in vector retrieval model, we are weighing, that means we are giving weightage to keywords. But that weightage is not binary. They are multidimensional. First point. Second point, in vector space model, we are comparing the vector of queries, vector of documents. If the vector of document and queries are closer, it means that there is a relevancy of this particular retrieved item to the query of the user. So B and C are the features of vector space model. Good. Okay, this is something related to information retrieval. They say system effectiveness and cost effectiveness. System effectiveness means the ability of the system to retrieve relevant records and not to retrieve non-relevant records. That is system effectiveness. What is cost effectiveness? In terms of economy, in terms of money, in terms of energy, in terms of human resources, how economical a system is. That is cost effectiveness. Okay, that is about information retrieval. Good. This is something new. Please see the screen. TREC is credited for bringing the concept of evaluation of IR system. They say that TREC is a project which started the process of evaluation. Wrong, because TREC is a new concept. Long back in 1950s, we had Cranfield experiment 1, experiment 2 for evaluating IR. So first concept is wrong. Second concept is correct. TREC is a information retrieval experiment. It is an open source experiment process. It is an open testing standard. Second statement is correct. Actually, what is this TREC? Please see here. The Text Retrieval Conference, which is sponsored by US Department of Defense. They started this in 1991. So what they do is that every year they meet in the open platform and they evaluate various information retrieval systems, the open system. Okay. But you know, Cranfield experiment started long back in 1957 by Clever Dunn. Cranfield 1 project, Cranfield 2 project, 2 projects. So TREC is not the first project. It is one of the projects. Okay. December 2018. Which among the following are the characteristics of informative abstract? See, informative abstract, they give detailed information about the content. And if you are reading the informative abstract, you need not consult the original because it is a kind of a substitute for the original. 1 and 4 are not the quality of informative abstracts because they say that orientation to serve specific group. If you are preparing an abstract specifically for a particular group of people, it is called slanted abstract, not informative abstract. And if your abstract is reviewing, that is known as review abstract, that is not the informative abstract. So what is the answer? 2 and 3 are answers. Good. Once again, they have given a list of ISO and they are asking you to match. There is no other, you have to by heart the ISOs. First one, ISO 2146, they talk about registry services. See, nowadays, lot of libraries are working in the networked environment where each and every computer system will have registries. How to maintain these registries? There is a standard for libraries, ISO 2146. And secondly, we have ISO TR, technical report. They talk about library buildings. So what is the condition you should have? What are the parameters you should have while designing your library building? Each and every part of library building. Okay. And third one, ISO 11620, they talk about library performance indicators. If you want to judge a library, if you want to evaluate a library, what are the various points on which you will be evaluating the library? This 11620 talks about that. The last one, 16642, they talk about computer application terminology in library science. Okay, please remember these ISO standards and the purposes for which they are prepared. Good. Then here you are asked to match. Okay, type of abstracts. What is the role of the abstract? You can see here, critical abstract. What does it do? Critical abstract, it evaluates the document. Indicative abstract, it alerts the user with the content of the document. It gives very basic information. What is informative abstract? It gives comprehensive description of the document. It gives full entire description. Slanted abstract, it gives information only to satisfy the requirements of a particular group of users, maybe for students, research scholars, commerce graduates, something like that. They are slanted abstract. So 4 different kinds of abstracts here. Fine. June 2019, no question. December 2019, they have given a question. As the level of recall decreases, the precision increases. It's true. As I told you, precision and recall, they have got inverse relationship. Fine. So first statement is correct. Recall and precision are not always inversely correlated. This is wrong. Okay, R is false. And June 20, they ask a question. Preparation of critical abstracts requires subject expertise. True. Because if you want to prepare a critical abstract, unless otherwise you are thorough with the subject, you cannot critically interpret, you cannot give your own interpretation on the content of the article for which you are preparing the abstract. So first point is correct. Second point, in a critical abstract, the abstractor includes his or her opinion and interpretation. Exactly. In no other abstract, the abstractor includes his or her own interpretations. Only in the critical abstract, the abstractor includes how he feels, how he perceives the contents of the document. His own interpretation are also included in the abstract. Fine. June 2020. Fine. So these are the questions, around 19 questions I have collected from June 2015 to June 2025 years question papers. Good. And a remaining portion of my question answers are from very many different sources. I think you will go through these questions too. Okay. Okay. ISO was developed in which year? In 1960. First version was published in 1973. ISO has got 4 components, you know, record label, directory, data field. What is the last one? Record separator. You know this very well. Okay. Yes. And please tell me how many characters will be used to denote record separator? Anyone? How many characters are used to denote record separator? 1 character, 2 characters, 3 characters. How many characters? Anyone? Yes, please. Any guess? No idea? 1 character. Okay, record separator, 1 character. Okay, fine. Next one, last step of ISO, record separator. Good. And it's a matching. Okay, record length 5 characters, record status 1 character, bibliographic level 1 character, base address 5 characters, indicator length 1 character. This you should know. 24 characters used in record label of ISO. Good. Here is the question. If a data field is repeated once, how many entries are placed in the directory? See, if one field is occurring only once, then only 1 entry is given directory. If one field is repeated 1 time, that means you have to prepare 2 entries. If one field is repeated 2 more times, then you have to prepare 3 entries. It depends on how many times the same entry may appear in a record. Depending on that, you have to make those many entries in the directory. Fine. That should be clear to you. Okay, directory, as I told you, how many directory has got 5 components. Tag, field tag, as I told you, every field will be having a tag, 3-digit field tag. Then length of data field 4, starting character position 5 characters, 1 segment identifier and 1 occurrence. So totally 12 plus 2, 14 characters for every directory. Okay. Then questions about Z39.50. Okay. So Z39 is for establishing a communication between network computers. Is it true? And it is more useful in library consortia environment. See, for example, some 100 libraries, they come join together and they are getting subscription to a lot of resources. So when you have a consortium, if you're having Z39.50, you will be able to approach all these libraries, the members of your consortia, and you will be able to get data from those libraries. So Z39 will be very useful if you are in a consortia. Good. What is the formal name of Z39.50? It's the original name, a long name. Can read, please. Okay. Then what is true about Z39.50? So it is a standard for 2 computers to talk to each other for the purpose of information retrieval. And though both the computers are using 2 different systems, it helps to interoperate and enables the easy information retrieval. And it works better in a client-server environment. So all these facts are true about Z39.50. In Z39.50, see, when you get results from many search places, all those things can be combined and you'll be able to integrate the information received from various resources, and these can be arranged in a particular order and these can be presented to the user. That is a beautiful feature of Z39. That is why you just go to Google, you type some keyword, you wait for the results. You see, results will be coming from various databases. All those will be sorted in a particular order, will be displayed because they follow all these standards. Fine. Next question. Who is responsible for the development of version 2 and version 3 of Z39? See, there is a separate group called ZIG group, Z-I-G, Z39.50 implementers group. So that group is responsible for developing all the versions. Version 4 was begun. They started working on it. Then nobody knows what happened to that. 1995 they started. Fine. So whenever you're having these many problems in the network, Z39.50 will be able to solve all the problems. What are the problems? See, you're having only very little metadata about internet sources. A lot of search syntaxes are there. Google is having its own search syntax. If you're having Microsoft search engine, this is having another syntax. If you're having Opera, Ask.com, every search engine has got their own search syntax. But then also, this particular Z39.50 will be helping you to search across databases, whatever may be the search syntax you are using. And lot of user interfaces. See, your computer will have a different kind of search interface depending on the operating system you are using. Though you are using many different kind of operating systems, absolute no problem. Z39.50 will be able to help you to retrieve the documents. Good. Okay. And this I told you. In Z39.50, the client is known as origin and the server is known as target. Okay. And who is submitting the query? Client or origin is submitting the query. And who is receiving the query and answering? Server or target is answering. So these are the basic terms you need to understand with regard to Z39.50. Good. In the market, you can see these are the possible Z39.50 softwares. Z Navigation, Bookware Database, EndNote, UFO, Insight. These are all client server software which you can use in your library. Okay. Who is the maintenance agency? Library of Congress. If there is any interoperability issue, say if 2 systems are not able to exchange data, then that becomes interoperability issue. Who will solve the issue? None other than ZIG group. Z39.50 implementers group. They will take up these problems and they will solve the problems. Good. Okay. What is Z39.50 association? See, association is nothing but a session. A session is established between, see, now we are having a session. You and me are in a session. The same way, there will be a session between client and server. Who is starting the session? Client is asking for some information. So session is started. Who is going to end the session? Either client or server. Any one of them will end the session. This concept is called as, this session is called as Z39.50 association. Good. What are the different services being provided by Z39? Confirmed service, no confirmed service, conditionally confirmed service. All these three services are available in Z39. What is confirmed service? Client is asking for the information, server is giving the information. When both take place, that is known as confirmed service. What is non-confirmed service? Client is asking for the information, but server is refusing, or server is not able to give the information. That is known as non-confirmed service. What is a conditionally confirmed service? Client is asking for the information. Answer may come or may not come. It depends on that particular instant, that particular time period. That is known as conditionally confirmed service. For example, if you are an authenticated user, you will get the information. If you are not installing firewall in your computer, you will get the data. That kind of conditionally confirmed service. See, Z39.50 provides all these three different kinds of services. Okay, fine. Then comes, I told you about 11 services and I explained you 3 services. Z39.50 provides 11 services. Initialization, I told you. Search, I told you. Retrieval. There is a service called retrieval. It has got 2 services. I told you each and every one of the 11 services may have either one service or more than one service. See, if you take search facility, only one single service is available called search. If you're having a retrieval service, only one service is there. Sorry, 2 services are there. One is present, another is segment. The present one, what it does is that, see, when you're asking for the information, you can ask only for 10 records. I want only first 10 records. I want 20 records. I want only PDF files. So that kind of request can be done using present service. What is segment service? See, you're asking for some information, but the server is not able to give all the information in a single installment. What the server will do, server will split the information into various segments, various parts, and they will send the answer in 2 or 3 parts. That service is called as segment service. Okay, fine. Result set delete. So here, using this service, see, after making all the searches, you can, as a client, you can ask the server, please completely delete all my requests, all my queries, all my search results. So what the server will do? Server will delete all your query results. So no, your query will not be saved in the server machine. For that purpose, you can use service called delete. Okay. Then access control. See, for example, whenever you are trying to access a particular material, the server will ask you, please give your username and password. Or they will use some captcha. They will ask you some, they'll give some letters, they will ask you to input. Or they will send some kind of PIN number to your mobile number you have to enter. So that kind of access control will be exercised by the server. Okay. Then comes sort facility. See, if you want to sort your records, see, after getting the results, you want to arrange all your records, maybe in the order of year of publication, in the order of number of citations received. So when you want to sort the records, you can make use of sort facility, which provides 2 services called sort and duplicate. Sort service, if a client is asking for sort service, then the server will sort all the records based on the request and records will be sorted. If you're asking, if a client is asking for duplicate detection service, then the server will find out all the duplicate records, they will remove the records and unduplicated records will be shown to you. So these are another service available in Z39.50. Browse facility, you can go and type, give a keyword and you can go and browse the entire collection. That is a browse facility. Then comes extended service. Sometimes the servers may be offering some special service. So as a client, you have to approach them, you have to ask them and get the new service. That is known as extended service. Explain facility, you have some doubt. So client can ask the server to explain some concepts, to update some areas. So the server will give some tips. That is explain facility. The last one is termination facility. Either client or server will end the session once the information retrieval process is over. Fine. These are 11 areas. Good. Then comes Z39.71. Who launched this particular product? NISO, National Information System Organization America, they launched this Z39.71. Okay. So before the Z39.71, we had two standards. One standard, one holding standard for serials, one holding standard for non-serials. But in Z39.71, we have merged both the standards and we are giving only one standard these days. So these are two records merged. Fine. How many levels of specificity are there? I told you there are 4 levels. Okay. As a library, you can decide what is the level in which you want to display your holdings data. So what are the 4 levels? First level. So I told you there are 6 areas. I give a recapitulation. Z39.71 prescribes 6 areas. If your library is a very small library, you feel that, sir, for me level 1 is sufficient. If you feel so, you have to use only 2 areas: item identification area and location data area. Only these 2 areas are required for level 1. This sufficient means you can use only level 1, no problem. If your library is somewhat bigger, you can go for level 2. In level 2, we are using item first area, second area, and one more area called date of report area. So 3 areas are used in level 2, and there is an option. If you want, you can use general holdings area. You can use if you want. This is level 2. If you want to use level 3, then you can have item identification data area, location data area, data of report area, extent of holding data area in the basic structure, the basic things. And general holdings is optional. It's a 3rd level. No, my library is universal library, very big library. I want to be very detailed holding data. Then you can choose level 4. In level 4, we have got all the 6 areas with an option to include general holdings area. So depending on the library, you can decide what is the level of holdings you want to display to your users. 4 levels are there. Okay, then. What is composite holding statement? See, if you are preparing a single statement, single record to denote many copies available in many locations or many libraries, then you can have composite holding statement. If you are preparing a statement to denote a particular copy which is available in a particular library, then that is known as copy specific holding statement. So the reason why I am giving all these new things is that maybe in the forthcoming examinations, whenever the question paper setter sets a question, they will look for all these detailed notes. Okay, these will be really helpful to you when you face the future examinations. Okay, these kinds of questions will not be available anywhere, any textbook, any guide. It will not be available anywhere. These are the self-prepared questions. So I hope that you'll be able to go through and get a grasp of all these things. Fine. Then comes open-ended holding statement. That means, so if you feel that, see, for the last 10 years, I have been getting this journal. Now also I'm getting, next year also I'll be getting, then you can have open-ended holding statement. Okay. What is a secondary bibliographic unit? Book is the preliminary. Along with you, when you're purchasing the book, they are giving you 1 CD free of cost. So that CD is the complementary or secondary bibliographic unit. So that is known as secondary bibliographical unit. Okay, good. What are the punctuations? So I will take 2 more minutes. I will show you only these punctuations. Then we will get into question answer or kind of doubts clarification session. In the Z39.71, they are using colon. What for? To denote 2 different orders. Volume is higher level. Part is a lower level. It's a hierarchy. You can use colon. Comma is used. Volume 1, comma volume 3. That means that volume 2 is not available in the library. What is the forward slash? Sometimes volume 1 and volume 2 will be published together a single volume. In that case, you can use slash. Hyphen means it is continuing. See, volume 1. We started volume 1. We'll be getting volume 2, volume 2 days to come. It's a continuing. You can use hyphen. Parenthesis. I told you this is enumeration. This is chronology. When you want to join enumeration and chronology, you can have a parenthesis. Plus symbol when you want to include both primary bibliographic unit and secondary, you can have a plus symbol. First volume plus 1 disk. Question mark. If you're not sure about a particular year, you can have 187. The year is not known to you. You can have a question mark. Fine. And let me skip these 2 or 3 slides. Maybe I will go to next one. This is a description of Z39.76 different areas. Okay, I think you will read arams when you're free in the leisure time. Abstract, standard abstract, I told you about all these things and all. Discipline oriented abstract. If you're preparing an abstract for a particular subject, chemical abstract, biological abstract, LISA, they're all discipline oriented abstracts. Mission oriented, for example, you are preparing a paper for a conference. So you are reading you're preparing abstract exclusively for this particular assignment. It is called mission oriented. Auto abstract, you give a document, computer will prepare abstract. It is a computer prepared automatic abstract. Okay. Then graphic abstract, these days, especially in chemistry, instead of showing you all the substances and compounds, in a graph form, they show the entire output of the research work. Graphic abstract. Mini abstract, it gives an overall view of your title. Fine. And structured abstract will be in paragraphs. Unstructured abstract will be in a single paragraph. Telegraphic abstract, they use incomplete sentences, just like a telegram. Homotopic abstract, that is same time the book and its abstract is published together, same time. That is known as homotopic abstract. Highlight abstract, an abstract where they give all the curious information, leading information without giving the findings. So after reading this, you got a lot of interest to know more and more about this article. You will go and search. They're known as highlight abstract. Okay, good. Last one, IR system. I will tell you only 2 or 3 things here. Vector space model. A search strategy. You have keyword search, phrase search, exact search, you have Boolean search, truncation search. You can have left truncation, right truncation, middle truncation, truncations you can have. Then proximity search. See, you can search for 2 keywords which are 10 words apart. That means difference between 2 words should be only 10 words. You are searching for information, you are searching for retrieval. In between these 2 words, minimum only 10 words are. That kind of proximity search can be conducted. Field specific search, you can search particular field. You can limit your search by year or audience, all those things. You can range your search, greater than, lesser than, all those things. And yes, last slide, I'll tell you. Generality number and Snowprint ratio. What is the generality number? It says, see, out of total documents available in your library, how many number of items are relevant to a particular query? That is known as generality number in the information retrieval evaluation. And what is Snowprint ratio? It's very interesting ratio. It says number of relevant documents that are not retrieved. See, you go to library, 100 books are there. You are giving a query. To match your query, 10 books are there. But only 5 books are retrieved by the cataloging record. Remaining 5 relevant records are not retrieved. That is known as Snowprint ratio. Fine? Yes. So that's about evaluation of information retrieval system. Fine? I think I'm clear. Maybe next 10 minutes we'll have a kind of a discussion. Whatever areas you want more explanation or whatever areas you are not clear, you are free. Please go ahead with your questions, please.
Sir, truncation search.
Okay. For example, you want to search for all the words ending with the X, L, Y. You want to search for all the terms ending with the X, Y, Z. What you can do is that put a star symbol, type X, Y, Z and enter, so that all the words ending with X, Y, Z will be listed. This is known as left truncation. Left truncation means all the right side results will be same. If you are using a middle truncation, left side, right side words will be same, but the place where truncation is used will be different. Okay. So truncation means when you are not very clear with the spelling. For example, you can try for WOM, then you put a star symbol, then you put N. Then what this truncation search will do? It will retrieve the documents which are having WOMAN and WOMEN. Okay, in that kind of situation, you can use truncation search. Okay, am I clear?
Yes, sir. So we can use this technique for all the files, all type of files.
Yes. In Google, if you go to Google, you can use all these search strategies. You can adopt, absolute no problem. Google supports all these truncations.
So the star position matters, right?
Yes, of course. Depending on the star symbol, whether it is a left truncation or right truncation or middle truncation, that depends on your requirement. You have to decide.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please. I want more questions today, please, because we talked so technically. Okay, it's not a lively one. So you can ask some questions, please.
Sir, Boolean search.
Okay, Boolean search is a person called it's named a person, and or not. These three are the Boolean operators. Okay. See, for example, whenever you want to conduct a search, you're searching you are doing a search on Indian geography. You want in the search results, you want both India and geography to appear. Both these words should be there. Then you use and operator, India and geography. So you will get only those results where both India and geography appear. Clear? Okay. If you want to, suppose you are not getting sufficient answer, you want to extend your search, you can go for or operator, India or geography. So results will be the results matching India, the results matching geography, the results matching India and geography. All these things will be resulted. You'll get more results. So if you want to narrow the research, go for and operator. If you want to broaden the research, go for or operator. See, if you want to limit your research, go for not operator. So I want library automation, not computerization. Something like that. I want library organization, not library management. So you can use for not operator. So and or not operators are called as Boolean operators. These Boolean operators can be very well used in Google search also. Is it okay? Is it clear?
Okay, sir. Okay.
Next question, please. Please ask some questions because we talked about so many things today, so many technical things, new things. So I would love you to ask.
Sir, FRBR.
FRBR is the one we discussed today. It is a functional requirements for bibliographical records. In fact, you can say that it is like ISBD. It is like ISBD. We are going to, in AACR2, we used ISBD. AACR was based on ISBD. Now, instead of AACR2, we are having RDA, Resource Description and Access. The same way, instead of ISBD, we are having FRBR. RDA is based on FRBR, which is a ER model, entity relationship model. What is the entity relationship model? A model where entities will be there, elements will be there, and their attributes, their qualities will be there, and there will be a relation between these entities and their attributes. That kind of model is FRBR model, which has got three different groups of entities. One group is work, expression, manifestation, and item. Another group is person, family, and corporate bodies. And third one is subjects. I think we had a detailed discussion yesterday on FRBR. If you watch yesterday's video, no, you'll be able to grasp a better idea about FRBR. Okay.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, please go ahead.
Which of the search strategy is useful to increase recall output? Triangulation is right, sir? Is it triangulation?
Actually, you have to see the option. In the option, I have not given truncation. Okay, I just told you whether you can whether you have to broaden the search or you have to narrow the ask. Okay. See, if you broaden your search by using or operator, you will get more results. Your recall percentage will be increasing. So if you want to increase the recall output, you have to broaden your search. To broaden the search, normally we use or operator. That's what I meant in that question. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yes, next question, please. You can ask something about is that 39.50 or 39.71 or IRS evaluation methods. Many things we discussed today. So I request you kindly ask some questions.
Sir, the first version of set 39.50 is developed by whom? Z39.50's first version.
Now, one minute. Let me take the question. Is it in the question answer format or it was in the PPT? Yeah?
Sir, you have discussed the second, third, and fourth version.
Okay. So I didn't mention about the first version of Z13.50. Okay. Let me see whether I have mentioned it anywhere in my PPT because I don't remember the year exactly. One 1 minute. I just see. I think maybe the information is not given in my PPT. Maybe I will share with you. No problem. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much. Even if you get the answer, maybe the next class share with me. Okay.
Okay, sir.
What's your good name?
Anjuna.
Huh?
Anjuna.
Anjuna or Anjana?
Anjuna.
Okay, Anjuna, please try to get an answer for this question, and I will ask you in the next class.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, next question, please. I think we can spend 2 or 3 more minutes on question answers. Please ask some questions. Or what about the content? You feel it's okay? Content is okay? Or you feel, sir, these are the contents which we already know, sir, something like that?
No, sir. Content is okay.
Okay, good. Because I would like to find out something which is not normally available in traditional guides. If you go to traditional guides, the same thing, whatever is available in one book, same thing is available in another book in a different style. So that's why I thought I should go into some real text. I would like to collect some material for you which is not available in some other class.
Sir,
Yes, please.
Sir,
yes.
Sir, can you suggest one book for studying, sir? This.
For library science?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. See, recently, maybe couple of months before, I purchased the book from Arihant, NTA UGC Net JRF Set Library Information Paper 2, as per updated syllabus applicable from June 2019. I probably maybe 2 to 3 months before, when I searched on many platforms, this was the only one book which was available according to the present syllabus, present 2019 syllabus. Okay, you can go for this particular book, published by Arihant company, published in I think 2019 or 20. Okay, the book is around
Sir, Arihant. Sir, H or A?
Arihant.
Arihant.
Arihant. Arihant.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, this is a good book which I was using for some. Actually, I was setting some question paper and all. I was able to get some good questions from this particular book and try. Okay. Okay, next question, please. Any other question? You have to ask questions. Yeah, asking question is the best way of learning things. Any question from Anupama?
No, sir.
Okay. Sarika, you got some question to shoot?
No, sir. No.
You don't want to shoot any questions. Okay. Ramya? Ramya, any question?
No, sir.
Okay. Risa Nair, I think Riaz Nair. I'm sorry, Riaz Nair.
No, sir.
No question. Okay. Then Sujina Jayachandran, Vandana, and Smita. We'll take only one more question. We will take only one more question. Anyone? So if there's no question, I will just would like to spend 1 minute. So in the today's session, we talked about 3 things. One is about the international standards or protocols meant for exchanging the information between 2 libraries, or to conduct the information retrieval concept between 2 computers, or to display the holdings data of your library. So we talked about ISO 2709, we talked about Z39.50, and we talked about Z39.71. These 3 things we discussed. Then we talked about abstracts, its types and guidelines, and we ended up with information retrieval system, its features, various models, and what are the different tools you can adopt to evaluate the functioning of an information retrieval system. Fine? Yes. Maybe I will be meeting you again on Monday with yet another set of concepts. Okay. Shall we wind up session? If no questions are there?
Thank you, sir. No questions.
Okay, thank you so much for your patient listening and being with us in this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you so much. Sarika, Anupama, thank you so much. Amit, Mr. Amit,